Hi everyone, thanks for listening to another episode of Dogman Encounters Radio. I'm Vic Cundiff and I'll be your host for the show. If you've had a Dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you. Tonight's guest is Mike Lascelles. Mike, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Vic.
Thanks for being here. Mike, please give us a brief bio on yourself.
Sure. My name is Mike Lascelles. I live in a city in northern Ontario, Canada, named Sudbury. I'm a third-generation hard rock miner. I was born here, 1972, 44 years old, and I've lived here pretty much all my life, except for 6 years in the middle where I moved out and then came back.
Canada seems like such a beautiful place. I can't wait till I can visit and take a look around myself.
Yeah, a lot of people go all over the world to go see beautiful places, but we have a lot of it here right in Canada. No need to travel all over.
Oh, I'd say you do. Yeah, I'm looking forward to the time when I can make it there. Mike, when you were small, what kind of fascination did you have for creepy things that went bump in the night?
Well, when I was younger, I watched some of the scary shows that were on TV, but the effects back then were not like they are now. I was kept sheltered from that kind of stuff by my parents at a young age, so I really didn't think about it too much. I was around for the whole Sasquatch thing in the 70s when that was on the news a few times here and there. I was pretty interested in that, but I mean, there was no internet or anything like that. I didn't read books about it or anything. There was something on TV about Sasquatch, I'd watch it, but that's about it.
I see. When did you first hear the term Dogman?
I first heard the term Dogman about 2 to 3 years ago for the first time. Up until then, I had absolutely zero idea they existed. I'd never even heard of them. Sasquatch was about the only thing that I had ever heard mentioned in my life.
How did you hear about it back then?
Actually, through your show. I was on the internet and I work underground. The job I was doing at that time was pretty repetitive. So some people listen to music. Some people listen to other stuff. I chose to listen to talk radio. I found a program. I put them on my phone and I would go underground. And when I was doing this repetitive job, I would sort of listen to audio and I would go through different phases. For a while, I would listen to, let's say, plane crashes, and then I would get bored of that, and I would move to something else. And then I was listening to Sasquatch audio. And you know how on YouTube, one video leads to another, to another, to another. Well, in the morning, I was just sort of downloading a bunch of them just to get whatever I could. And I just happened to download episode 1 of your Dogman Encounters show. So when I started listening to it, I thought, what the heck? This is not Sasquatch or Dogman. I've never heard of this before. And I started listening to it more and more. And it was those two gentlemen, episode 1, who had that encounter out west. And the way they were speaking, it really caught me because well, to me, they were being 100% sincere. I mean, if they weren't being sincere, they deserve an Oscar nomination, that's for darn sure, because I totally believe them. So then I watched episode 2 and 3 and 4, and from then, if I had some time at night, I'd look around on the internet, and I would learn a little bit more here and there. I didn't realize the extent of the encounters people have been having.
I don't know, Mike. Mines are pretty dark places. You ever freak yourself out listening to the show?
A little bit, but you know what? Don't tell any of my miner buddies. Please.
Oh, my lips are sealed. You can count on me. Yeah, hopefully they won't listen to the show.
Well, we'll see, I guess. I'll know in the lunchroom if I start getting razzed about it. I'll know they heard it.
Oh, I'm sure you will know. That's funny. How long was it after you had your encounter before you realized what you had seen was a Dogman?
Well, I had my encounter in 1988. So between then and when I seen your show, or heard your show, I had no idea it was a Dogman that I had seen that day. And then when I got to about third or fourth episode of yours, everything just flashed back, and I just, boom, and everything just clicked, and holy mackerel. And I realized that there was a pretty darn good chance that that's what I had seen, and that's what it was, and I had been mistaken this whole time. So from 1988 till 2 years ago.
When you look back on that experience, are you glad you didn't know about Dogman back then?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've been an avid outdoorsman my whole life. I love fishing and hunting and even just going out in the boat and stuff like that. So had I known at that time what I had seen, I probably would have had a lot more sleepless nights in the bush during that time. So kind of not knowing allowed me to sort of enjoy it a little more worry-free for a lot of years. But now, of course, that's different.
I know what you're saying. Yeah, sometimes it's best just not to know.
Yeah, for sure. I agree.
Did you go crazy studying about them once you found out about Dogmen?
Yes, I did. Especially after I figured out that, in all likelihood, that's what I had seen. I sort of couldn't get enough about it. I listen to your show every week. There's actually a few shows I listen to every week, and I've looked it up online, and it's fascinating to me.
It is a fascinating topic. After finding out so much information about them, did that make it easier or harder for you to deal with your experience?
Well, I would say that I didn't have a hard time dealing with the experience at that time. Now that I know what it was, I suppose it makes me think, wow, like those things are out there that whole time, and I didn't know, and I kind of get shivers about it. But it didn't change how I feel about it either way, really.
Well, that's good. Before you tell us about your encounter, please tell us about the place where you had it.
Sure. In Marathon, Ontario, the land there is very, very heavily forested. I don't know if anybody's ever driven through that area on Highway 17, Vic, but it's full of hills and valleys, and the forest itself is, I think they call it boreal forest, is very, very thick. You have trouble, you can't even really walk through it. All around Marathon, actually, truckers have a real hard time because when one hill stops, another one starts, and then there's corners, and then down the hill. And so I wouldn't really say it's mountainous because out west they have like real mountains. If I told someone from BC that these are mountains, they would probably laugh at me. But to someone else, it's actually pretty, I would say, mountainous. And they're completely covered in mostly spruce trees, fir, pine, stuff like that. A lot of water around there, a lot of different lakes, all kinds of different fishing, excellent habitat for moose, bears. Everything's abundant up there. It's kind of beautiful, actually.
Oh, it sounds like it is. All right, Mike, please tell us about your encounter. Give us every last detail that comes to mind.
All right. So one day after school, a friend of mine asked me to join him in his father's car, and we would take a drive. I said, sure. My girlfriend jumped in with us, so there was three of us in the car. In the car, I can still remember, it was a blue 1978 Oldsmobile 88. So like a big car. Like the Frenchmen up here, they call that a bateau. Like it's a boat. It's a big car. You don't see too many of them around nowadays. But back then they were pretty common. They were all over, and it was excellent. So gas was cheap. We used to just take regular rides after school and drive all over Marathon. And there wasn't really much to do there, so we used to just go see friends, go to the lake, go visiting, just killing time like teenagers do. So on that particular day, we had decided to take a ride from Marathon up to Highway 17. Now, that's about a 7-kilometer stretch, which is, I think, about 4 miles for you American folks. The road between Marathon and the highway is, you're going uphill, because Marathon is actually on the shore of Lake Superior. There's a pulp and paper mill there. Now, Highway 17 is up much higher. So that whole 7-kilometer stretch, you're basically driving uphill. It sort of takes a couple of real wide turns, but it's up and down. But generally, it's up. So if you look way up ahead in the road, you're looking up a lot higher. And it heads from south to north. I guess when they cut that road, they had to blast through a bunch of rocks, and they used that rock as they crushed it to build the road on top of it. So the highway itself is actually elevated quite high. The tree line on either side is far, far, far from the road. I would say 50 to 70 feet. It changes here and there. So from the side of the road to where the tree line is, it's 50 to 70 feet. Depends where you are. But the road itself is actually probably about, in some spots, 30 feet up. So I guess they want to fill in through the valleys and stuff like that. So it changes to keep the road flat. Some of the embankments are actually pretty high up. Between the bottom of the embankment and the tree line, there's absolutely nothing. It would be like a pole line. You know how they stripped the whole place bare? Well, that's what they did. They stripped an entire wide patch, I guess, for the machines to drive around when they built the road. And they built the road. And then they just planted grass. There's sort of short little grass there. You can see perfectly. It's perfectly clear. So on our way out of town, we made the corner and we started heading towards Highway 17. We come around a couple of corners and then there's a super long straight stretch. Like the road is up and down, but you can see like it heads straight up. At the very top of the hill where the peak is, which is maybe, I don't know, it's been a long time. I would say maybe it was a kilometer away. So, just over half a mile to the top. We came around the corner and we were just chatting in there like kids do, laughing, whatever teenagers talk about. And I said, oh, look at that, top of the hill. What is that at the top there? So, of course, they looked and they're like, I don't know. We were squid because it was so far away. We could see something there, but we couldn't see what it was. And because it was standing right on the peak of the road, there was nothing in behind it. So it was just sort of like sky in behind it type thing, just a silhouette of something there on the right-hand side of the road. So we're talking about it, trying to figure out what the heck this thing was. And it came to me. I said, oh, look at that. Is that a deer? And to see a deer, I know, is not really a big deal. But in Marathon, at that time anyway, when I lived there, it was a big deal to see a deer because there was no deer there. That's moose habitat. And in that part of Ontario, I don't know about other places, but I know there, the moose population and the deer population, they don't generally mix up. It's either only moose or only deer. And there was moose. I mean, we'd see them all the time. Every week you were seeing, you had to watch driving on the roads. It was treacherous actually during the fly season because the moose, they just come running out of nowhere. And I mean, a lot of people get seriously hurt by that. So to see a deer was like, oh wow, is that a deer? Oh my goodness. But we didn't know what it was. We were just guessing. And as we got closer, we were looking and it started getting bigger and bigger. It didn't move an inch. It didn't budge. So we got closer and then the color started coming in and that's not brown. It's gray. So we're like, still, we had no idea what this was. As we were getting closer, my friend, who was a very careful driver, he started slowing down, slowly started slowing down as we're talking about this thing that we're all three of us are staring at straight ahead of us. And no, it's not this, not that. What could it be? And then when we seen it was gray, I said, oh my goodness, it's a wolf. And up until that time, I'd seen countless moose, countless bears. I mean, I'd seen lynx. I'd seen a lot of animals regularly, especially when I lived up at Ignace. But I had never seen a wolf. And it was shocking to me, like, wow, a wolf in plain day. And as we got closer, we started talking about it. Once it became obvious that it was a wolf, we started saying, look at the size of that. Because at first, there's nothing to compare it to. It's sort of on the side of the road. the tree line is far away. It's at the peak. You're a kilometer away, you know. How big is this thing? We noticed that the legs were very, very skinny. It was very tall, very tall. And we were just sort of flabbergasted by that. We were going back and forth, like, look at that. Oh, my goodness. And we got closer. Still, that thing did not move a muscle. And it was pointed, so it was right on the side where the pavement meets the gravel. Right there, pointed straight south, like straight back to Marathon. We were headed north on that side of the road. So it was almost, it wasn't, I wouldn't say it was dead on facing us, but it was as straight as you're going to get, you know. And we got closer, and as we approached, and as my friend was slowing down more and more, we started getting a realization of how tall this thing was. I knew wolves were big and stuff like that, but I didn't realize how big they actually were. Now, keep in mind, this is the first time I'd ever seen one in my life, so I had nothing to relate it to. So as we see it, and we're talking about how big this is, he's slowing down, and we got maybe 50 feet away from it. And at this point, my friend slowed. He didn't stop, but he slowed to like a snail's pace. It was at a crawl speed. And the whole time we're looking straight at this thing, it's looking at us. We're talking. We ended up getting closer. It still didn't run away. Now, in the car, my girlfriend and I were sitting in the back seat, and my friend, the driver, with his dad's car, was our chauffeur. He was in the front. Anyway, I was on the passenger side. So, as we drove past the wolf, I got a perfect look at it. I got a perfect look straight on through the windshield, and then as he went at crawl speed past it, had the window been rolled down, which it was not, I could have easily stuck my hand out the window and rubbed it on, like I wiped my hand across it on the way by. That's how close I was to this wolf, what we thought at the time was a wolf. But I don't think I ever would have put my hand out because, I mean, this thing was big. We couldn't believe the size of it because now the car is beside this thing. And I'll tell you how big this thing was. When we went beside it, when it went by my window and he was crawling and my girlfriend and I and him were staring right sideways out the window, that wolf, the back end, not the shoulder, like the shoulder height, like the back of it, not the head, its back, was at least as high as that car. Now, I remember that car that I was describing. I mean, that is a big car. By today's standards, that's a huge car. 58-inch wheels. I mean, I'm 5'10". If I was to stand upside that car, I'm sure it comes up to my neck. I mean, that's a big enough car. Now, when we went by, I looked right at that thing, and I seen its chest, I seen its legs, I seen the side of it, I seen its stomach. But one thing I couldn't see was, when we got beside it, that is, its head, and I couldn't see the top of its back. So I would say it was, you know, it was within just a few feet, like it was right beside the car. It was right, like, encroaching on us almost. And I could not see the back of it. I think at that point my mouth dropped. Like I could not believe the size of a wolf. I had never seen one before. And it really shocked me. Like I wasn't afraid at all because we were in the safety of the vehicle and stuff like that. And in my mind, it was just a wolf. But I was really amazed at the height of it. We kept going past it, but slowing, very, very slow. Now, as we were talking about it in the car, we're going back and forth, and I'm sure there was a few expletives involved, you know, which I won't say on the air. But I looked at my friend, the driver, and I said, "Are you seeing this? Are you looking at look at the size of this thing?" And in the time it took me to turn my head to look at him, because I wanted to see if he was looking, and to look back, maybe 2 to 3 seconds, By the time I looked at him and looked back, the thing was gone. It was gone. So that means, and we looked. I mean, he stopped the car. We were looking everywhere. We could see the whole side of the road. I mean, from the tree line to the road, down the embankment, it was gone. So this animal cleared 50 to 70 feet. It was, first of all, the road was about 30 feet up. I mean, you wouldn't want to slide down on there to go down to the bottom. I mean, it's jagged rocks and it's up high. You'd be picking rocks out of your butt for quite some time if you tried to do that. So this thing cleared 30 feet up and 50 to 70 feet to the tree line in 2 to 3 seconds, flat, no problem. I did not see it. I did not see it run. But, I mean, it didn't evaporate. And it was sunny out. It wasn't dark where you could have made it to a shadow or we just caught we missed them. No. This thing went that far in that short amount of time. And we couldn't believe it. It was amazing to us. So we continued talking about it. He picked up speed again. We finished the journey up Highway 17. We turned around. We came back talking about it the whole way. And on the way back to town, we didn't see it again. And we went back to town. So when we got back to town, a lot of these people in Marathon have been living their whole lives. There's a lot of natives there and stuff like that. I was going on and on about, we seen a wolf and you should have seen that. You have no idea how big these things are until you actually see one. I mean, it's backwards at the height of the car. I guess people, I don't know if they think you're exaggerating or whatever, but a few people told me, well, what you seen was the timber wolf. There's two kinds of wolves in this part of Canada. There's gray wolves and timber wolves. Timber wolves are much bigger than gray wolves, but they're also almost impossible to see. They're very cunning, very smart, and very rare. In fact, one of the natives there told me that there's only 3 ways that you'll ever see a timber wolf. If it's wintertime and you're in an airplane and you're flying over a lake and they're crossing a lake, if it's dead, or if you're really, 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 really lucky. So from that time on, in my mind, I thought that I seen a timber wolf. I always thought that. And throughout the years, I told this story to a bunch of people. I seen a wolf. And it was this big. And that, because, over the years, especially being an outdoorsman and that, you tend to swap stories with your buddies. Oh, I seen a snapping turtle was this big. I seen this. I seen that. Well, I had the wolf story of all wolf stories. I mean, this thing was unbelievably large. And all these years went by and you find new stories to tell and stuff like that. And what happened was I had found your show all these years later. And I started watching listening to your episodes. And then by the time I got to about 3 and 4, I was having conversations about wolves and stuff like that. And my 2 kids and I were talking about wolves. And I was telling them what the natives said and timber wolves. And I seen this wolf. It was so big and stuff like that. And now we have smartphones. So I wanted to make sure my kids believed me, because over the years, a lot of people didn't believe me about how big these wolves were. So I grabbed my phone, and what do? You Google it. I Googled timber wolf. I image searched large timber wolves or something like that. What popped up shocked me, because it was not even nearly the same creature. I mean, the proportions were different. Everything about it, except for maybe sort of the color and it could be a cousin or something of it, but it's not the same animal. There's no way. And I couldn't understand that. Well, what the heck, what was that? And I thought about it, and I had no explanation for it. And then, like I say, when I was listening to your episodes, when I got to about episode 4, everything just clicked. Boom, 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 boom. That's what I saw. I know that's what it did not stand up on 2 legs, nothing like that. But I'm telling you, it was size-wise, there is no way that was a regular timber wolf. There's no way. It's impossible.
After having that experience, have the woods ever been the same for you?
No. Well, after I had the first experience of seeing it, yes, like from then on, up until that, when everything clicked for me, yeah, it was like, I'm not fearful in the bush. I mean, I've hunted and fished. I sleep in a tent. We're not allowed to arm ourselves up here like you folks are in the States. So, I mean, you're out in the bush in a tent with no guns, and I had no problem with that. But now, after everything clicked, and I know that not only do these things exist, I've learned about them, and not only that, I know that there's some in Ontario, because I've actually seen one. Yeah, it sort of has me looking at just more aware of my surroundings when I'm in the forest, and sort of picking up the cues from my dogs and that, because, dogs can hear and smell and stuff like that, and they'll tend to warn you if something is coming or lurking around at night. So we just sort of watch the dogs, but I'm more vigilant now after my revelation than I was previous to that. Absolutely. No questions asked, for sure.
When you know they're out there, it does have a way of changing things. There's no arguing that. You described what you saw as looking like a huge wolf. Did you notice it having any strange proportions, or was it just huge all over?
Keeping in mind that this was the first time that I had ever seen what I thought was a wolf, to me, none of the proportions were strange. But nowadays, I'm much older now. I've got much more experience under my belt. And then with Google and looking up timber wolves and all that, it was completely different. So first of all, the legs on this thing. The legs were, I don't know if you've ever seen a calf moose or not, but I mean, they're all legs. They're very, very tall, skinny legs. That's what this thing had. This thing had very skinny legs, and it was odd looking almost how tall and skinny this thing was. Like, almost, I don't know how to describe it. It was very, very skinny. Now, as far as the body goes, I was looking at it sideways. I looked at it both ways, straight on, nearly straight on, and sideways for like a longer look than you see most animals. They don't give you much of a chance normally. They're gone. This thing was cool as ice, and it didn't budge. So when I went beside it, looking straight on sideways, a timber wolf, they're beefy, they're chunky looking, they're husky looking, they're solid. This thing here, it was much different. It was more sleek, more streamlined, but more ripped. How a pit bull dog looks, how a pit bull, it's all chest, like it's got big pecs there and under, like, big lungs in it, in the chest sort of, if you look at it sideways, curves, like it comes way down and like straight in the front, and then curves around, and then it comes up to the stomach. It comes right up, like it's got like a very, very flat stomach. It's cut like a bodybuilder would be. I would have to say, like, if dogs could be bodybuilders, I mean, this thing would be one, because the chest was incredibly huge, but rounded. The stomach and the chest were not straight across at the bottom like a timber wolf. Also, the fur was much, much shorter than a timber wolf. The timber wolves, I've seen the fur on Google anyway. I mean, the fur is much longer. No, this thing had short fur. I would say the fur on this thing was probably maybe 2 inches long. I would think it was short, matted, straggly kind of fur on it. The color too. I know, and I know in wolves there's color variations and all that. This thing here was, the color of it was, I would, the only thing I could think of is that gray paint on a basement floor a lot of people use, or foundations, that gray. That was the primary color of this thing. But mixed into it, there was black fur. also, and sort of speckled, but evenly. But it was mostly all gray. And the ears were, again, they were different. They were on a timber wolf. They're wider and more triangle. These things were pointed more and straight up, but they were very, very, very long ears on this thing. The eyes on this thing, it was a sunny day. The eyes, they were very light gray, like almost white. And the pupils were dilated right close, so you could see the color of the eye was taking up most of the eyeball. And they were light colored. I mean, this thing was looking at us, and I don't even think it blinked the whole time. So, I mean, I got a perfect view of it. The snout on this thing was not like a timber wolf. The snout on this thing was much longer, but it was tapered. It was more, I would say it was closer to a coyote's muzzle, but except much longer. It got narrower and narrower towards the end until it got to the nose. I didn't see any teeth or anything sticking out the sides or anything like that. The tail on it was just a bushy tail. It was, I don't know, a couple feet long. The tail didn't strike me as odd, but it was the height of this thing and the amount of muscle on its chest. I mean, it really was impressive to look at. And the skinny legs, tall and skinny. It was different looking. And I've seen plenty of gray wolves since then also in my life, and it's not even close. If someone was going to say it's a mistaken identity, right away, there's no way. It's impossible. In my mind, to me, wolves do not get as tall as cars. I've never heard of that or anything.
Yeah, normal timber wolf wouldn't be as tall as the top of the door in that car, so yeah, we both know that's no timber wolf.
Yeah, I know that with every fiber of my being. It was not a timber wolf.
Yeah, there's no way. Did it have shoulders like a canine or like a man?
It had shoulders like a canine, except for the fact that it was much more muscular than a canine. But yes, the shoulders were not like a person. No, cannot say that.
I see. Was there a culvert or any other place it might have been able to hide besides the tree line where you wouldn't have been able to see it when you turned back and it had disappeared?
No, there was no culvert anywhere near there. In fact, there's only, I believe, one road if you're headed north on the left-hand side. My friend's dad used to take me in there bird hunting. There may be a culvert there, but that is way further up the road. It's not even close to there. You can't even, that's around some corners up ahead. So where we saw it, it was a straight stretch, elevated, both sides, but it's going up a hill. So I don't think there's a need for a culvert there because any water will just run along both sides of the road all the way down. There's no roads between there and Marathon. It's just a straight shot.
Well, yeah, sounds to me like it must have headed for the tree line then. As time went by after you had that experience, how has your girlfriend dealt with that experience? In a healthy way, or has she struggled?
Actually, my girlfriend at the time, I lost contact with her because just a few months later, after this encounter that I had, my father got his job back in Sudbury. They said the economy recovered and everything started doing well again. And my dad had a pretty good work record and they liked him there. So I think 5,500 guys applied for a job. They were hiring 75. Well, he was one of them. So in August of 1988, we packed our lives up again and moved back to Sudbury. So how she reacted to it, I know at that time, between the time I seen her and the time I moved, it's only a couple of months. I only talked to her a few more times. We sort of parted ways there. And she just was in disbelief about it. I don't know, girls aren't as interested in things like that. She saw it. I saw it. She seemed okay with this. She just, oh wow, yes, was it ever big and stuff like that. But she didn't seem traumatized in any way by it. other than being, at the time it was pretty exciting the way it happened. We were going on about it in the car, excited. She wasn't crying or anything. We were more excited than anything else at the time.
Well, I'm glad you two handled it so well. What time of year was it when this happened?
Okay, well, the snow was gone, and school was still in because it was an after-school kill time ride. So I would have to guess that it would have been about May. It had to have been May. As you can imagine, I'm sure the snow tends to last a little bit longer than it does down south. So if I would say it couldn't have been March or even April, because guaranteed at that time there's still snow there. It had to have been May, but school was still in and it gets out at the end of June. So sometime in May, I would think, would be pretty darn close.
Yeah, sure sounds like it. When you were cruising past that creature at such a slow speed, do you remember seeing any whiskers?
No, I don't remember seeing the whiskers. I'm sure it had whiskers. There was nothing striking about them on the snout. That part seemed kind of normal. So no, I didn't really notice the whiskers, Vic.
Like you said, it might have had whiskers and might not have had them, but all we're looking for here is honesty. If you don't remember seeing them, then that's perfectly fine. It's about time for us to get out of here, Mike, but before we do you have any closing comments you'd like to share?
Actually, I do have a little bit of closing comments. I know it's probably going to be a little different than a lot of the guests on your show, but I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. Up here in Canada, we are not allowed to arm ourselves when we go in the forest. So we're sort of at the mercy. A gun is useful, even if to fire some shots in the air to let people know you need help or to scare an animal away. So I know that sort of there's a lot of debate going on in the States about stuff like that. My personal opinion to our American cousins south of the border that we love so much is don't lose that right, because once you lose that ability, you'll never get it back. And then it's a different story in the bush if you have no way to defend yourself. So I would think that hopefully the folks down there remember that and never give that up. That's a right that you guys need to keep. Take it from a Canadian. And that way there, at least you might have some type of a chance to defend yourself should anything happen. Not even for dogmen, for bears or whatever. You never know what can happen. The bush can be a beautiful place. It can also be a very dangerous place. So it's important to use guns safely and wisely, but it's also important to be able to use them when required. So that's all I got to say about that.
Well, I can appreciate the concern, but if you ask me, I don't see our guns ever being taken away from us. I just don't think that's going to happen. But having said that, thank you so much for coming on the show and telling us about your experience, Mike. I appreciate it.
No, thank you very much, Vic. And just let me take a quick moment here to thank you for all the work you do and that. And I know that my personal experience was not a traumatic one. Young and stupid, inexperienced, whatever. It didn't traumatize me. But I know there's a lot of people out there who aren't so fortunate and have had very, very scary, traumatic, even dangerous experiences. And the fact that even over the years, with me telling the size of this wolf and seeing people roll their eyes and stuff like that, I can only imagine had this thing stood on two legs, and I tried to tell people that. And had I been traumatized about it and did not have anyone to turn to talk about it, that's a tragedy in itself. So for you to have this forum for people to talk about it, and I'll take the opportunity to thank you for a lot of people out there that really appreciate what you do. And you do it very well, by the way.
Well, thanks for the good words. I wouldn't have it any other way. I'm just so fortunate to be in the position where I can help these eyewitnesses the way I try to do. Well, thanks again so much for your time, Mike. Have a great night.
Thank you. You too.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye. If you've had a Dogman encounter of your own and would like to speak with me, whether in private or on the show, please go to dogmanencounters.com and submit a report. I'd love to hear from you.